Today I'm going to show you how I stopped mulching 90% of my garden. If you're tired of doing it yourself, or worse, digging out your plants after someone else installed the mulch, just keep going. It still seems like I can't get away from buying at least a little bit of mulch every year. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what mulch is actually good for, how to use less over time, and how to know if you've graduated and are going to be done with mulch forever. Most of us assume we need mulch every year to keep the garden looking nice and healthy. Because in early spring, let's be real, it just kind of starts to look like it's returning to nature. We'll say that. If you look here, you've got a mixture of different things. Leaves, twigs, stems, they all have a different color and size, and as humans, when we see things that are different sizes and colors, we think that looks messy. When we see things that are the same color and texture, we think that looks neat and tidy. It's just like our tired brains looking for some kind of order in a chaotic world. Is that too much? Dial it back. Okay. I totally understand this actually, because even for me, it's hard for me to wait out the garden bed when it looks like this in the spring. It just looks more natural and less manicured. There's nothing wrong with that. I love the way the garden looks at different times of year, but between March and May, kind of in between time where I just don't think it looks the best. This is just how it looks. It looks like it needs a little something. But what if I told you in 3 or 4 weeks, you're not even going to be able to see the ground at all? Because this is what my garden looks like in June. Can you tell that we mulched the month before? So that means if I just wait a few weeks, I really don't need mulch. I know you can see mulch on the outside of my garden. We'll talk about that in a minute. I have a native plant garden, so most of these plants don't need to be fertilized. They don't really need the soil to be amended with mulch or compost. They're already in their home and they love the clay they're planted in. But even if your plants are not native, a lot of our ornamental plants don't need mulch either. Let's think about some of the plants that most of us have. Daylilies, hostas, peonies. If you know, you know, you can't kill those plants. They just don't need us to help them with mulch. They do pretty well on their own. Now hold on, before I get canceled, I just want to be clear. When discussing mulch, I'm not talking about the vegetable beds, orchards, agricultural crops. Mulch and soil amendments are really helpful to get better yields. Here I'm going to be talking about native plant garden beds, perennial beds, ornamental beds, flower beds, those kinds of things. There are going to be times when we want to mulch those areas, but there's also some ways around it. So when do we really need mulch? There are plenty of times when mulching is a really good idea. The better you understand the reasons we mulch, the more you'll be able to make the best decision for your garden this year. So when we create a garden, we disturb the soil by digging holes for plants and roughing up the soil to sow seeds. This stirs up what we call the seed bank. The soil has basically collected millions of weed seeds that are just sitting there under the soil, waiting for it to get stirred up and seen by the sun so that they can sprout. That's why it seems like sometimes the weeds appear overnight. It's like, where did they come from? They came from the seed bank. This is where mulch can be really helpful. In new gardens, after we just planted, we stirred up the soil and the seed bank, but mulch can cover up those weed seeds and prevent the sun from hitting them so they won't sprout. You would never plant tomato seeds and then put mulch on top of them, right? Because they're not going to be able to work their way through the mulch. Same thing with a lot of weed seeds. Now, this doesn't work for all weeds, but it really helps a lot. It really makes a huge difference in how many seeds start growing. This gives your plants a chance to get bigger so that their leaves can take over the job of the mulch by shading the area themselves. When our perennial plants are small, they just don't grow as fast as weeds. That's why the first 2 years of a garden are actually the hardest, because that's when you're going to have the most weeds. So mulching the first year or even the second year can make a difference between a garden that's healthy and that has plants that you planted and a garden that is driving you nuts, overgrown with weeds. The best time to do this is in the spring. That's when the weed seeds are just getting started. Springtime is also a time when we like to freshen up the edging and get some of the grass out of the edging where the grass is trying to grow into the garden bed. This means we have kind of a muddy edge where the soil is exposed. A little bit of mulch at the edges can really freshen up the garden and make it look a little bit nicer when you're waiting for the perennials to leaf out. But not all of our plants have their leaves close to the ground. Young trees have to compete with weeds and lawn grass. They compete for water and nutrients. A lot of people don't know that most of the tree's roots are found in the first 12 inches of soil. So when a young tree is planted in the lawn, this dense mat of lawn roots actually competes with the tree. This is why young trees can really benefit from having a ring of mulch around them. This way they can really stretch out their roots so they can get growing faster. Mulching around trees is recommended by the Morton Arboretum to give your plantings a really good start. At least a 3-foot diameter for small trees. I think more is better. Of course, I'm always trying to get rid of lawn grass. Please do not pile the mulch up around the tree trunk. This is called a mulch volcano. Mulch should start several inches from the root flare and pile up around the tree like a donut, not like a volcano. Mulch also protects the tree from human mistakes, like accidentally hitting the tree trunk with the weed whacker. This is a thing that happens when people are maintaining the lawn, but lawn doesn't grow well everywhere. This north side is just too muddy and shady to grow grass. No matter what we did, it was a straight up mud path in the spring. We just needed something to keep our feet dry, so we decided we'd try a mulch path. It actually works great. So let's get to the good stuff. How do you actually need less mulch? I don't know how this got started, but there's a style of gardening of having single plants several feet apart from each other surrounded by mulch. They look so lonely. They were never meant to grow this way. They want to be with their friends, and that's why I have the best news ever. If you want to reduce your mulch, plant more plants and plant them closer together. Let me show you what I'm talking about. It's May 1st here in Zone 5B, about 2 weeks before we plant tomatoes. This is peak mulching season. Let's take a look at my gardens to see where this mulch is supposed to go. Let me know if you can find the problem. So check this out. Phlox subulata, creeping phlox. This is native to North America. Gorgeous flowers. This has been blooming really well for a solid 2 weeks, even through thunderstorms and frost. So let me know, where exactly am I supposed to put the mulch? Should I just kind of lift them up and put well, I'm not going to throw mulch on top of my plants that are looking for sunlight. That's not right. All right, how about this shade garden on the north side of the house? I heard nothing grows in shade, huh? Only hostas will grow here, right? Nope. I've got woodland phlox, wild geraniums. Here's our geraniums just starting to bloom. Wild hydrangea. We have wild columbine looking great. Look at those blooms. Hummingbirds are gonna love that. There's a little bit of empty space behind it. I guess we can put some mulch there. Look at that. Woodland phlox. So as you can see, there's nowhere for me to put this mulch. Where's it supposed to go? How about under this shrub right here? Oh, no, we've got plenty of Pennsylvania sedge. Don't need mulch there. Okay, how about in this dry part shade? Well, I've got some sedges, Monarda bradburyana, a short bee balm. I can probably throw some mulch back here to make it look nice, but you might be seeing a pattern here. Where is the mulch supposed to go? These plants are their own mulch. They are not crowded. They're spaced perfectly for how they want to live. You might see some mulch pieces because I did mulch last year because this was a new bed last year. So this year I'm just gonna fill in some of the spots, but really next year this is gonna be full of plants and I'm not gonna have to mulch. Okay, these are growing strong, but what about plants that leaf out later in the season? This is harder because I have to wait until almost June for them to cover the ground, so I have to tolerate looking at the ground, which doesn't look as neat and tidy. But really, we would only see the mulch for a few weeks, and for me, that's just not worth it. Will it look amazing while I'm waiting for these plants to leaf out? No. Will it look amazing if I cover it with mulch? Also no. I mean, it will look slightly more tidy for sure, but in another month, this is what it's gonna look like. You can't see any of the mulch that we put down the previous year because it's being covered by the plants anyway. So this year we're not putting down mulch, we're just gonna wait. In a mature garden where your plants are already a couple years old, really the choice is yours whether you want to mulch or not. Planting close together also helps prevent weeds. I've got like some grasses in here, some grass weeds, but really, who's gonna compete with this? Honestly, the dandelions don't stand a chance. Another tip to reduce your mulch is to use filler plants like sedges and grasses. These guys don't get a lot of respect because their flowers are little and they're, not very showy. This is the flower, but they're excellent filler plants. See, we're used to feeling like we don't have enough space in our gardens, and so we don't want to put things like sedges and grasses in there because we want to have flowers instead. But once you realize that you can plant densely, you can still have all the flowers you want, and then in the space, you can put these little grasses. Oh, and they're so soft. This is Pennsylvania sedge. This is nothing like invasive sedges. You're thinking of nut sedge. That's not something that's sold in a garden center. This is Pennsylvania sedge. If you'd like to fill in the spaces between your plants, but you're not too familiar with sedges, you can learn how to do that in this video.